Snow wasn't falling that morning on the coast of Maine. It was the wind, sharp, salt cold, carrying the roar of waves slamming into the cliffs of Seabrook, pushing against a young woman standing at the iron gates of the Avery estate. Hannah Cole tightened her thrift store coat with one hand and held a folded resume in the other. 28 years old, one suitcase, one exhausted heart, and one little boy waiting back at the apartment she could no longer afford. Life had cornered her before, but never quite like this. She whispered to herself, "Just breathe, Hannah, you've survived worse." The gates opened with a low metallic groan, as if the mansion itself were waking up to inspect who dared enter. A woman in her late 60s, rigid posture, silver hair tucked neatly behind her ears, waited at the walkway. "You must be Miss Cole," she said, voice steady like a metronome. "I'm Mrs. Langford, the house manager. Follow me." Inside, warmth wrapped around Hannah in a golden glow. It smelled of polished wood, citrus oil, and something impossibly clean, like a life she had never lived. Marble floors stretched in geometric patterns beneath crystal lights. High windows drank in the winter sky. Hannah's breath caught. "This place is unreal." Mrs. Langford didn't reply. She'd clearly been doing this job long enough that awe no longer impressed her. As they entered the main hall, a woman stood waiting near the fireplace, poised, elegant, her hands folded in front of her. She was in her late 50s, maybe early 60s, with a soft steeliness in her expression. This had to be Margaret Avery, the owner of the house, widow of the Avery hospitality empire. She studied Hannah quietly, eyes flicking from her worn boots to her trembling fingers. "Miss Cole," Margaret said, "come closer." Hannah approached, trying not to let the anxiety in her stomach show. "Thank you for meeting me. I know my experience isn't as polished as some candidates, but I learn fast and I work hard. And I really need this job." Margaret raised a brow, but not unkindly. "Mrs. Langford tells me you recently relocated from Colorado." "Yes, ma'am," Hannah replied. "Denver. I had to leave after the diner I worked at closed, and with my son, well, I'm trying to build something stable for him." "A son," Margaret repeated thoughtfully. "How old?" "4. His name is Theo." Something unreadable flickered in Margaret's eyes, but she masked it quickly. "Do you have reliable childcare?" "Yes," Hannah nodded. "My friend Raina helps when I work. She's wonderful with him." Margaret paced slowly, hands clasped behind her back. "This is a large property, demanding. The job requires early mornings, unpredictable tasks, and a certain level of discretion. Are you prepared for that?" Hannah swallowed. "I am. I'll do anything necessary." Silence stretched long enough to make Hannah's palms sweat. Then Margaret exhaled, a long, measured breath. "Very well. You'll begin on a trial basis. If your work meets expectations, we'll discuss a permanent arrangement." Hannah blinked, hardly believing she'd heard correctly. Really? Thank you. Thank you so much." Margaret gave a curt nod, though something about the way she looked at Hannah suggested she was filing away every detail for later understanding. "Mrs. Langford," Margaret said, "show Miss Cole the house." They moved down the long central corridor, passing portraits, antique cabinets, and walls lined with framed maps of coastlines. Hannah tried to absorb the layout: right hall, kitchen, left wing, guest rooms, stairs leading to mezzanines that overlooked the ocean. But halfway down the grand stairwell, she stopped moving. Her feet simply froze. A single massive portrait hung on the curve of the staircase wall, floor to ceiling, illuminated by a skylight above. A family of 3 stood posed against a seaside backdrop. Margaret looked younger in the painting, her husband strong and broad-shouldered, but Hannah didn't see either of them. Her gaze locked onto the man standing beside them. Dark blonde hair, gray eyes like storm clouds rolling low over the Atlantic. A tilted smile, soft on one side, a small, unmistakable dimple on his left cheek. Hannah's heartbeat punched against her ribs. No, this can't be real." Mrs. Langford turned. "Miss Cole, is something the matter?" But Hannah was already stepping closer to the portrait, her breath tightening. She knew that face. She had memorized that face. She'd fallen asleep missing that face for nights that turned into months. The man who had held her in a cheap diner parking lot, who had promised he'd stay for breakfast but disappeared before sunrise, gone without explanation, without a number, without a trace. He had called himself Luke, a traveler, a wanderer, a man with no roots and no family. But the truth was hanging right here in oil paint and gilt frame. Hannah's voice came out in a whisper, barely audible, yet trembling like a struck chord. "That's him." Mrs. Langford frowned. "You recognize Mr. Lucas?" Hannah's legs weakened. She grabbed the railing to steady herself. "Lucas? His name is Lucas? No, he told me he was Luke, just Luke." Mrs. Langford blinked, caught off guard. "Miss Cole, that is Mr. Lucas Avery, the son of this household." Hannah's world spun. For 5 years she had carried heartbreak in silence, raising a child who looked more and more like a ghost from her past. A ghost she thought had simply drifted out of her life because she wasn't worth staying for. But now she knew. He hadn't disappeared into the world. He had disappeared back home. And her son, her sweet Theo, with those same gray eyes and that same tilted smile. He wasn't just the child of a man she once loved. He was the child of Lucas Avery, the heir to one of the most powerful families on the East Coast, and he had no idea. A shiver crawled down Hannah's spine as realization settled like cold salt air. Her life had just collided with a truth she wasn't ready for, but it was too late to look away. The silence after Hannah's whisper still clung to the staircase like fog when Margaret Avery appeared at the landing, her expression unreadable. Mrs. Langford murmured something under her breath, but Hannah didn't hear a word. She was staring at the portrait as if it had reached out and struck her. Margaret's voice broke the air. "Miss Cole, why are you trembling?" Hannah turned toward her, breath shallow. "Because the man in that portrait, the one standing next to you, he isn't a stranger to me." Her voice cracked. "He's the man who disappeared from my life 5 years ago." Mrs. Langford's eyes widened. Margaret stiffened. Something shifted in the atmosphere, subtle but unmistakable. "Follow me," Margaret said quietly, but with an authority that left no room for questions. "Mrs. Langford, hold all calls. No interruptions." The house manager nodded, and Hannah followed Margaret down a side hallway lined with landscape paintings, stormy seas, empty harbors, lonely lighthouses. Fitting, Hannah thought, because that was exactly what she felt like now, a lighthouse with a broken bulb, unable to guide anyone, including herself. Margaret opened a door at the end of the hall. Inside, the study was warm, wrapped in dark oak and a soft amber glow from a desk lamp. Books filled every shelf. A framed map of the Maine coastline hung above a stone fireplace. It was the kind of room built for secrets and for breaking them open. Margaret motioned for Hannah to sit, then she closed the door and turned the lock. Hannah swallowed hard. "Mrs. Avery, I didn't mean to react like that. I just... Look at me, Miss Cole." Margaret sat across from her, hands steepled. "Start from the beginning." Hannah's fingers twisted together in her lap. She felt 28 years old and 16 at the same time, strong enough to have survived life, fragile enough to shatter with one memory. "His name wasn't Lucas," she began softly. "Not to me. He said his name was Luke, just Luke. He never mentioned a last name, never hinted he came from all of this." She gestured around them, at the richness, the heritage, the power pressed into every piece of furniture. "It was Denver," she continued. 5 years ago, late autumn. I worked at a diner, the kind with metal stools and sticky menus. One night a man walked in with a backpack and a guitar case. He looked worn from the road, but bright somehow, like the world hadn't beaten him down yet. Margaret's gaze sharpened. "That sounds like my son." Hannah nodded. "He told me he did sound work for small bands. Said he'd been traveling for years, never staying anywhere too long. He laughed easily, helped me close up the diner even though he didn't know me. And then he kept coming back, every day." The memories unfolded in her voice, hesitant at first, then steady. "We spent 6 weeks together. He showed me street murals I'd never noticed, played silly songs on his guitar just to make me laugh. He'd talk about sunsets like they were something sacred." She pressed a trembling hand to her chest. "He said he didn't have a family, that he didn't belong anywhere." Margaret inhaled sharply, the first break in her composure. "Then," Hannah whispered, "one morning he was gone. His things, his guitar, everything. No note, no explanation. The number he gave me didn't exist. I thought maybe I scared him, or maybe he met someone new, or maybe everything he said was a lie." Margaret closed her eyes briefly, as if bracing herself. I didn't know I was pregnant yet, Hannah added. When I found out, I tried to look for him. All I had was a first name, Luke. No last name, no city, no connections. I searched buses, social media, traveler forums. Nothing. It was like he vanished into the air. The air between them hummed with tension. Miss Cole, Margaret said softly, my son left this house 5 years ago. He didn't say where he was going. He didn't call. He just walked out. He said he needed to breathe, to escape a life he didn't want. He refused help, refused money, refused every attempt to reach him. Hannah stared. At the same time, I lost him in Denver? It appears so. How long was he gone? A long time, Margaret said. Years. We knew he drifted from state to state, but he didn't share his whereabouts. Her eyes softened. He told me once, before he left, that he hated the weight of being an Avery, that he wished he could be someone else for a while. Hannah felt the room tilt. That's exactly what he was, someone else. Margaret absorbed that quietly. Then Hannah drew a shaky breath. And Theo, when he was born, he looked so much like Luke. The eyes, the smile. Her voice trembled. I never doubted who his father was, not once. Margaret leaned forward, her voice lower, gentler. Miss Cole, may I ask something difficult? Hannah nodded. What made you come here, to this house, to this job? I didn't know this was his home, Hannah said. I had no idea. I lost my job in Denver. Rent went up. I was drowning. A friend told me the Averys were hiring. I only hoped for a chance to give my son stability. She swallowed. I wasn't chasing Lucas. I thought he was long gone, maybe even dead. For the first time, Margaret's sternness cracked. Compassion seeped through. And now that you know, she asked. Hannah looked at her lap. I don't know what to feel. Anger, shock, maybe relief that he didn't leave because of me. Or maybe he did. Her voice thinned. But what matters most isn't me, it's Theo. Margaret nodded slowly. Then let us focus on him. And on the truth. She stood, walked to the corner cabinet, and pulled out an old leather-bound calendar. She flipped through pages filled with notes, meetings, travels, then stopped. This, Margaret said quietly, was the week Lucas left home. Hannah leaned in. The date matched, almost perfectly, the week Luke disappeared from her life. The two women exchanged a long, heavy look. Neither said the words aloud, but they both knew. Theo wasn't just Hannah's son. He was an Avery, and everything was about to change because of it. Margaret didn't speak at first. She simply closed the leather calendar, placed both hands on top of it, and drew a long, quiet breath. The room felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves were leaning in to hear what she would say next. Hannah, she began, her voice softer than before, there is something I must ask of you. And I ask it not as an Avery, but as a mother. Hannah straightened, bracing herself. I would like to meet your son, Margaret continued, before Lucas returns. Not for appearances, not for the sake of the family name. I want... She paused, searching for the right words. I need to know the truth with my own eyes, because if I allow myself to hope and I am wrong, I am not sure I could bear that disappointment. Her honesty disarmed Hannah. She had expected pride, or anger, or denial, not this. Hannah swallowed hard. Mrs. Avery, I understand why you want to meet him. I do. But I need to set something straight. She curled her fingers together. Theo is not a mistake. He is not an accident. And I won't let anyone treat him like he is. Margaret blinked, taken aback by the fire in her tone. I would never view him that way, Margaret replied quietly. No child should carry the consequences of an adult's choices. Hannah nodded, though her shoulders remained tight. And when Lucas finds out, because he will, you need to know that I'm going to be there. You can't tell him without me. You can't present Theo like some revelation delivered on a silver platter. Margaret's gaze steadied. You will be present. I give you my word. A long silence followed. The lamp hummed softly. The waves outside crashed against the cliffs like a steady heartbeat. Finally, Margaret folded her hands. Lucas will be home soon, within the week. Hannah's breath hitched. Soon? He is returning for the company's 40th anniversary gala and a board review, Margaret explained. It is one of the few times he cannot avoid coming home. Hannah stared at the floor. A week, just 7 days. That was all the time she had before her past walked back into her life wearing the name he had hidden from her. Hannah, Margaret said gently, do you wish for me to call him, to prepare him, or— No, Hannah cut in, shaking her head quickly. Not yet. Please, I need to think. And I need to talk to Theo and Raina, and I need time to figure out how to breathe again. Margaret's expression softened. I understand. Hannah stood, her legs unsteady. I'll bring Theo sometime this week, but please remember what I said. I will, Margaret replied. And Miss Cole? Yes. Whatever my son did, whatever choices he made, you are not to blame for any of it. Neither are you alone. Hannah didn't respond. She simply nodded once and left the study, the hallway spinning slightly as the weight of everything pressed down on her. By the time she got back to the tiny apartment she shared with Raina, her hands were still trembling. She fumbled with the keys, pushed the door open, and was hit with the warm smell of tomato soup and the sound of Theo humming a silly tune on the living room floor. He sat cross-legged among scattered blocks, building a crooked tower that leaned like it had survived 3 hurricanes. Mom, look, Theo announced proudly. My lighthouse is taller than me, Hannah's voice snagged in her throat. It's amazing, sweetheart. You did such a good job. He turned back to his blocks, humming again, blissfully unaware that the world he knew was about to tilt. Raina poked her head out from the kitchen. Hey, how'd it go? You look like you saw a ghost, or 2, or the entire cast of a horror movie. Hannah dropped onto the old sofa, the springs groaning under her weight. She covered her face with both hands. Raina, you're not going to believe what happened. Raina appeared with 2 steaming mugs of tea, handing one over before sitting beside her. Okay, start slow. What kind of rich people nonsense did they make you do? Did they ask you to alphabetize their fruit? Polish their seashell collection? Luke is alive, Hannah whispered. Raina froze. I'm sorry, what? Hannah lowered her hands. Her eyes glistened. He's alive, and he's not Luke. He's Lucas Avery. Raina stared at her, as if the world had tilted off its axis. As in, Avery, the Seabreeze Resorts Avery? That one, Hannah whispered. Raina blinked once, twice, then 3 times. Okay, wow, that man really lied with full commitment. He didn't just lie, Hannah murmured. He hid an entire life, a family, a legacy, and he left all of it to pretend he was someone else. And now? Raina asked. And now, Hannah said quietly, he's coming back. In a week. Raina set her mug down and grabbed Hannah's shoulders. Are you okay? No, Hannah said truthfully. I'm scared. I don't want Theo dragged into some billionaire circus. I don't want him judged or picked apart or looked at like he doesn't belong. Raina softened. You're his mother. You'll protect him. And if that Lucas guy tries anything, I'll throw a sandal so hard it'll become a family legend. Despite everything, Hannah let out a thin laugh. Thank you. Raina squeezed her hand. Does Margaret Avery know about Theo? She does now. And she wants to meet him. Hannah glanced toward Theo, who was now pretending his lighthouse could talk. She said she needs to see him with her own eyes. Raina's eyebrows rose. Honestly, that sounds kind of human for a wealthy matriarch. I know, Hannah admitted. I didn't expect it, but I still don't trust any of this. Raina leaned against the sofa, exhaling. Then we take it slow. You choose when Theo meets her. You choose how this goes. You're not giving your son away. You're just opening a door, a tiny door, with a chain lock and maybe a bodyguard on standby. Hannah smiled faintly. Yeah, a tiny door. Theo suddenly toddled over and climbed onto her lap. Mommy, can my lighthouse shine all the way to the ocean? Hannah kissed the top of his head. It already does, baby. But inside, she wondered, when Lucas Avery stepped back into her life, would that lighthouse beam guide them all, or shatter under the weight of the storm he brought with him? The next morning arrived gray and wind-brushed, the kind of coastal morning that smelled like salt and possibility. Hannah held Theo's small hand as they walked up the stone path toward the Avery estate. The boy bounced beside her, humming with curiosity. Is this where you're going to work, Mommy? Theo asked, eyes wide. Yes, sweetheart, Hannah answered, forcing calm into her voice. I'll be helping take care of the house here. We're just visiting today, remember? Theo nodded happily. Do they have birds, like the ones at the docks? Maybe, Hannah murmured. maybe more than a few. The front door opened before they reached it. Margaret Avery stood waiting, dressed in a simple navy cardigan over a white blouse. Her calm composure was the same as before, but her eyes softened when they fell on the little boy beside Hannah. "Mrs. Avery," Hannah said quietly, This is my son, Theo." Theo stepped forward without fear, lifting his chin politely the way Hannah had taught him. "Good morning, ma'am. I like your big house. It looks like the ocean is its friend." Margaret's eyebrows lifted, surprised. Then she smiled, small, hesitant, but genuine. "Well," she said, "that might be the most poetic greeting I've heard in years. Hello, Theo. I'm Margaret." He grinned up at her. "Hi, Miss Margaret." Hannah winced. "Honey, it's Margaret." "That's what I said," Theo insisted, proud of himself. Margaret chuckled softly, a sound even Hannah hadn't expected to hear. "It's quite all right. Would you both like a tour? The gardens are lovely this time of morning," Theo gasped. "Do you have boats and seagulls and maybe big waves?" "We have waves," Margaret replied. "The birds come and go. As for boats, you can see them from the cliff top." Theo clasped Hannah's hand tighter. "Mommy, can we see, please?" Hannah nodded, though her stomach fluttered. "Sure, let's go see." Margaret led them through the back of the house, out to a long path of stone slabs lined with trimmed hedges and old lantern posts. The ocean roared below the cliffs, its white foam spraying up as waves hit the rocks. Theo ran a few steps ahead, stopping every few seconds to point something out. Dandelions, a patch of moss, an odd-shaped cloud. "Be careful, Theo!" Hannah called. "I am! I'm being careful," he shouted back, though he moved even faster toward a wooden seesaw in the middle of the lawn. Margaret watched him go with a fragile tenderness Hannah didn't expect. Her eyes tracked every motion, every expression. "He looks comfortable here," Margaret said quietly. "He loves open spaces," Hannah replied. "He always has." "Lucas loved them too," Margaret whispered. The words slipped out before she could catch them, and Hannah saw her blink hard, as though steadying her breath. They approached the wooden play area, where a small seesaw and a rope swing hung beside a flower bed. Theo hopped onto the seesaw alone and used one foot to push himself up and down, laughing each time the board thumped lightly onto the grass. "You know," Margaret said, watching him carefully, "when Lucas was little, he used to push his lips together like that when he was concentrating." Hannah froze. Theo was doing exactly that. "And the way he squints when the sun hits his eyes," Margaret added, "and that little habit of tapping his fingers when he's excited. Lucas did all of it." Emotion thickened her voice. She cleared her throat, but the tremor remained. "Mrs. Avery," Hannah murmured. "Please," Margaret said softly, "call me Margaret." Hannah nodded, unsure what else to do. Margaret sat down on a wooden bench near the garden wall. Theo began running in small circles, pretending to be a lighthouse beam, spinning his arms while imitating the ocean's roar. Hannah watched Margaret watch him. The older woman's eyes shimmered, not quite tears, but close enough to reveal everything she was feeling. Hope, grief, a kind of cautious wonder. "He really is," Margaret whispered. "My goodness, he really might be." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Hannah sat beside her, hands knotted in her lap. "I didn't want this to be complicated," she confessed. "I moved here because I needed work. I never imagined Theo would walk into all of this." "Neither did I," Margaret said, "but sometimes life circles back to what was lost." Before Hannah could reply, the back doors slammed open. Mrs. Langford hurried across the lawn, her pace nearly a run. "Mrs. Avery!" the house manager called out, slightly breathless. "You need to come inside immediately." Margaret stiffened. "What happened?" "It's Mr. Lucas," Langford said. "His plane landed early. His car left the airport 10 minutes ago. He'll be here in 20 minutes. Hannah's heart ricocheted against her ribs. "What?" 20 minutes, Langford repeated. The world seemed to tilt beneath Hannah's feet. She stood so quickly the bench wobbled. No, Hannah murmured. He can't just show up now. I thought we had a week. Margaret, I didn't expect this either, Margaret said, equally stunned. Theo skipped over, clutching a handful of wildflowers. "Mommy, look, I made a bouquet." Hannah couldn't speak. She looked at his bright face, so happy, so safe in his own small world, and her chest tightened painfully. Margaret exhaled slowly. "Hannah, listen to me. You don't have to stay. If this is too much, too fast. Hannah shook her head. I told you I wouldn't run, and I meant it. Theo deserves the truth, even if it scares me. Margaret studied her with something like admiration. All right, Margaret said quietly. Then we face this together. Theo tugged Hannah's sleeve. Mommy, why does everyone look funny? Hannah knelt and cupped his cheek. Because, sweetheart, someone important is coming. Who? Theo asked. Hannah glanced toward the long driveway that led to the main road, already imagining the sound of tires crunching over gravel, the echo of footsteps she'd once memorized. She steadied her breath. You'll see soon, she whispered. Far off in the distance, a gull cried as if warning or welcoming what approached. The ocean wind picked up, and somewhere between the cliffs and the clouds, a chapter 5 years buried began rising back to the surface. In less than 20 minutes, Lucas Avery would walk through the doors of his childhood home, and he had no idea that the little boy in the garden was waiting for him. The sound of tires crunching over the gravel drifted through the Avery estate like a warning bell. Hannah stood just beyond the threshold of the sitting room, her palms damp, her pulse hammering in her ears. Theo played near the sofa, rolling a wooden sailboat along the carpet, blissfully unaware that his entire world was about to tilt. Margaret stood straighter when the front doors opened. Footsteps, firm, familiar, echoed through the marble foyer, and then he appeared. Lucas Avery stepped into the main hall with the energy of someone who had spent hours in the sky and years running from himself. His charcoal coat hung loosely on his arm, his dark hair was tousled from the wind, and exhaustion shadowed the lines around his eyes. Still, he carried the same effortless confidence, the kind that once made a girl in Denver forget the rest of the world for 6 precious weeks. He didn't see Hannah at first. He crossed the foyer, reached his mother, and wrapped her in a tired, affectionate embrace. Hi, Mom, he murmured. Long flight. Sorry for dropping in early. His words dissolved the moment he looked past her shoulder. Hannah. She stood frozen, her breath caught midair. The years hadn't changed him as much as she expected. He was older, broader, calmer, but the face was the same. The voice was the same. The eyes were the same storm gray Theo had inherited. Lucas blinked once, twice. Confusion flickered, followed by disbelief. Hannah, he whispered. Her stomach twisted. 5 years of hurt surged to the surface, but all she said, quiet, sharp, was, Hello, Lucas. He stared at her like she was a ghost he'd never expected to see again. What are you doing here? The old anger stirred, but she held it down. I work here. You work here? Lucas echoed, baffled. At my house? It's not your house, she replied. It's your family's. He opened his mouth to speak again, but Margaret stepped between them, her voice steady. Both of you, sit down, now. Hannah didn't move at first. Neither did Lucas. Tension hummed like a live wire between them. Living room, Margaret said, sharper this time. Before this turns into shouting. Hannah exhaled and walked into the small coastal lounge facing the sea. Lucas followed slowly, as if unsure the floor wouldn't collapse beneath him. Theo looked up from behind the sofa, his little hands still gripping the wooden boat. Mommy, who's that man? Hannah's chest tightened. Sweetheart, she said softly. Just keep playing for a moment, okay? Theo nodded and ducked back down, humming to himself. Lucas watched the boy curiously, not yet connecting the pieces, but drawn in despite himself. You have a child? He said quietly. Hannah sat down, spine straight. Yes, I have a son. The room seemed to shrink. Lucas swallowed. I see. Margaret chose the armchair nearest the window. Lucas, she said, folding her hands tightly, Hannah came to this house yesterday, and she brought her son this morning. She says... Her voice faltered for the first time in hours. Lucas frowned. Mom? Says what? Hannah didn't wait for Margaret to speak. That you're his father. The room fell silent. Lucas stared at her, stunned. I'm sorry. What? You heard me. That's impossible. Lucas shook his head, his breathing suddenly uneven. Hannah, what are you talking about? We were together for a short time, years ago. But you never told me. I couldn't tell you what I couldn't find, she shot back. You disappeared, Lucas. One morning you were gone, completely gone. No note, no goodbye, nothing. He flinched. I had reasons. And I had a baby, she replied. Alone. Lucas sank into the chair opposite her. He looked genuinely shaken, as if the ground beneath him had been pulled away. "Hannah," he said slowly, "are you absolutely sure?" She almost laughed. "He looks exactly like you." Lucas hesitated. Pain and disbelief warred in his expression. "If this is some kind of mistake, it's not," she cut in softly. Before he could respond, a soft thud sounded by the sofa. Theo popped up from behind it, holding the wooden sailboat above his head triumphantly. "Mommy, look! It floats on the carpet!" Then he saw Lucas watching him. The boy paused, studying him with innocent curiosity. Lucas's breath hitched. The resemblance hit him like a punch. The gray eyes, the dimple when he smiled, the shape of his chin, all of it, mirrored perfectly in the small child standing 3 steps away. Lucas's hands trembled. "What's his name?" he asked, barely audible. "Theo," Hannah said. Theo walked toward them, unaware of the storm swirling between adults. "Mommy, can he see my boat?" Lucas swallowed hard. His voice cracked. "Hi, buddy." Theo tilted his head. "Are you a friend of Miss Margaret?" Hannah placed a steadying hand on her son's shoulder. Her voice stayed even. "Yes, sweetheart. Just a friend of Miss Margaret." Lucas's face twisted with something raw. Hurt, guilt, longing, and terror all tangled together. He forced out a breath. "Hannah, why didn't you try harder to find me?" Her eyes burned. "I tried with everything I had. But Luke from Denver isn't exactly traceable when Luke never existed." Lucas shut his eyes. "I didn't think anyone would go looking." "That was your mistake," she replied. Theo tugged Hannah's sleeve. "Mommy, is he staying for lunch?" Hannah brushed his hair gently. "We'll see, darling." Lucas looked at her, lost. "Does he know who I am?" "No," she answered quietly. "And for now, that's how it stays." The ocean roared beyond the windows, filling the silence that none of them knew how to break. Lucas lifted his gaze to Theo again, this time unable to hide the ache in his eyes. He had come home early, unplanned, unprepared, unguarded, and he'd walked straight into the truth he never imagined waiting for him, a truth shaped like a 4-year-old boy holding a wooden boat. The late afternoon sun dipped low over the water, washing the Avery garden in a soft gold that made the wind feel gentler than it had all day. Margaret pushed open the glass doors and motioned for them to follow. "Fresh air," she said quietly. "All 3 of you need it." Hannah wasn't sure anything could ease the tension coiled in her chest, but she stepped outside anyway. Theo sprinted across the grass toward the wooden swing set, his laughter breaking the stillness like sunlight cracking through clouds. Lucas followed at a slower pace, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, expression tight with nerves. The last hour had knocked the oxygen out of him. Now he walked as though every step carried 100 questions he didn't know how to ask. Theo hopped onto the swing. "Mommy, push me!" Before Hannah could answer, Lucas cleared his throat. I can try," he said. Theo blinked up at him. Can you push high?" Lucas swallowed. I think so." He placed a careful hand on the swing's wooden back and gave a light push. Too light. The swing barely budged. Theo frowned. "That's tiny." "Right," Lucas murmured, trying again, this time stronger. "Is this better?" The swing moved a little more. Theo grinned. "Higher, like the birds." Lucas inhaled, braced himself, and pushed harder. The swing glided forward, almost in rhythm with the ocean breeze. Theo shrieked with delight. "Again, again." Lucas tried to smile, but his tension made it wobbly. "Sure, buddy, you got it." He pushed, once, twice, 3 times, each one smoother, more confident. His voice was warm but shaky as he spoke. "You like the ocean, Theo? You ever watch the whales in winter?" Theo's eyes lit up. "Whales? Real whales? Like big? "Very big," Lucas said. "They pass along the coast every year. And the ships out there, those steel ones, they're so tall they look like buildings on the water." "Theo loves boats," Hannah said quietly from behind them. Lucas glanced over his shoulder. "Do you?" Theo nodded excitedly. "I want a boat when I grow up, a fast one." Lucas opened his mouth to respond, but as he stepped backward to keep pace with the swing, his heel struck something solid and unforgiving. He stumbled, flailing, hands grabbing at the air. And then he toppled flat onto the grass with a thud so loud even the seagulls seemed startled. A stone seal statue sat behind him, looking smugly innocent. Theo burst into uncontrollable laughter. He fell! He fell like a pancake! Hannah's hand flew to her mouth, but it was too late. She was laughing too, softly at first, then with genuine warmth she hadn't felt in years. Lucas groaned, staring up at the sky. "I'm okay," he muttered, in case anyone was wondering. Theo leaned off the swing and peered down at him. "You're funny." Lucas blinked. "Funny? Good. Funny or funny weird? Both," Theo declared. Hannah's smile faded as fast as it had come. She cleared her throat, willing herself back to steady ground. "All right, Theo," she said. "Why don't you go with Margaret? She wanted to show you the greenhouse." Margaret appeared at Hannah's side as if summoned, extending her hand to Theo. "Come see the tiny oranges. They're as sweet as candy." Theo hopped down eagerly and ran to her. "Candy oranges!" As the two disappeared toward the greenhouse, the garden grew quiet again, leaving only the whisper of waves and the thump of Lucas brushing grass off his shirt. He stood slowly. "Can we talk?" he asked. Hannah folded her arms. "About what?" "About everything." His voice cracked with sincerity. "I owe you the truth. I owe both of you the truth." She didn't answer, but she didn't walk away either. He took it as permission. "I should never have left without a word," he said. "I know that. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I swear to you, Hannah, if I had known, if I had even guessed you were pregnant, I would have come back. I would have been there." "You weren't there," she said sharply. "That's what matters." He winced. I know, and that's why I'm asking, begging, for a chance to make it right. Not all at once, not in some dramatic way, just let me be in his life. Let me start small." She exhaled slowly. "Small means what, Lucas? A promise you forget tomorrow?" "I won't forget," he whispered. She stepped closer, her expression hard but not cruel. "Then listen carefully, because I'm not repeating myself." He nodded. "You don't get to appear out of nowhere. You don't get to show up without warning. You don't get to make promises you can't keep. Every step you take in Theo's life happens on a timeline I set. If you want to be a parent, you prove it with consistency, not speeches." "I can do that," he said instantly. "You don't even know what it involves." "I don't care. Whatever you ask, I'll do it." Her tone softened, but only slightly. "And when things get difficult, and trust me, they will, you don't disappear again." Lucas's eyes burned. "I won't. I swear I won't." "Words," she said. "I need actions." "I'll show you actions," he said quietly. "Every day if I have to." For a moment, neither spoke. The wind rustled the long grass around them. A gull cried overhead. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then the sudden vibration of a phone shattered the fragile peace. Lucas pulled it from his pocket. On the screen, a name flashed bright. Blair Kensington. Hannah froze. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Who is that?" Lucas stared at the name, dread tightening his jaw. "It's complicated," he said. Hannah's eyes hardened. "Of course it is." The next morning dawned too bright for Hannah's liking. She hadn't slept, replaying Lucas's shaken face, his trembling voice, the name on his screen, Blair Kensington, and what it meant. She didn't know if Blair was a friend, a partner, a ghost from the past, but whatever it was, she had a feeling it would not be gentle. She was right. A sleek white convertible slid through the Avery gates just past 10, its paint shimmering like frost under the sun. The engine purred with the confidence of someone who had never taken a bus in her life. Hannah stood near the bottom of the curved staircase. Theo balanced on her hip, watching the car glide to a stop. From it stepped a woman dressed in cream silk and sunglasses the size of teacups. Her blonde hair was perfectly curled, her heels impossibly high. She moved as though every surface beneath her had been designed solely for her entrance. Blair Kensington. She swept into the grand foyer without knocking, without pausing, without acknowledging the staff who scrambled out of her way. Her eyes landed directly on Hannah and Theo. "Oh," she said, lips curling. "So the rumors were true." Hannah stiffened. Theo's grip tightened around her neck. Blair removed her sunglasses in one elegant motion. "You must be the new help." Her gaze drifted down Hannah's outfit, then to Theo's little sneakers. My, very comfortable, aren't you? And you've brought your accessory." Hannah's jaw clenched. Before she could reply, Margaret Avery descended the staircase, her posture straight as an arrow, expression unreadable. "Blair," Margaret said, "you should have called." "I did." Blair flashed a glossy smile. Lucas didn't answer, again. Her eyes flicked toward Hannah. "Now I know why." Theo leaned closer to Hannah's shoulder. "Mom," he whispered, barely audible. "It's okay," Hannah murmured to him, but her voice shook. Footsteps echoed from the corridor. Lucas appeared, sleeves rolled, hair still damp. Clearly, he had hurried. "Blair," he said, stopping short when he saw Hannah and Theo behind him. His face paled. "You shouldn't be here without calling first." Blair gasped theatrically. "Oh, forgive me for forgetting that courtesy now applies to fiancés." Hannah blinked. "Fiancé?" The word hit her like cold water. Lucas closed his eyes a moment, gathering himself. "Blair, we talked about this yesterday." "No," Blair said sharply. "You talked. I listened. And then you hung up on me. You don't get to end things over the phone like I'm some assistant you're scheduling lunch with." Then she smiled sweetly at Margaret as if they were sharing a joke. "So," she continued, "are we pretending this," she gestured at Hannah and Theo, "is normal? That your son's house is now some sort of daycare?" Margaret's voice cut through the air. "Blair, watch your tone." "Oh, please," Blair snapped. "We all know what this is." She stepped forward, heels tapping sharply on marble. "Lucas, tell me you're not seriously considering letting this situation compromise your reputation or your future." Hannah felt heat rise to her cheeks. "This situation has a name," she said. "His name is Theo." Blair's eyes sharpened. "I'm aware," she said. "Believe me, the whole city will be aware once the gossip spreads. A child appearing out of nowhere with a staff member? It's a stain on every headline about this family." Lucas's expression shifted. Something inside him snapped. "Blair," he said slowly, voice trembling with anger, "don't talk about him like that." She rolled her eyes. "I'm being realistic. A surprise child? Do you really think investors won't raise questions? People expect stability, clean narratives, not—" She waved a manicured hand. "This." Theo shrank into Hannah's shoulder. Lucas stepped in front of them, blocking Blair's line of sight. "Stop it. This is not your place." "I am your future wife." Blair's voice rose. "It is absolutely my place." "No," Lucas said. Blair froze. "What did you just say?" Lucas took a breath that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his chest. "You're not my future wife. We're done." The silence cracked like ice. Blair laughed once, disbelieving. "Excuse me?" "We're done," Lucas repeated. "I meant what I said on the phone, and I'm saying it again now, in front of my mother, in front of anyone who needs to hear it." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a velvet box, and pressed it into Blair's palm. Her hand shook. "You're giving the ring back?" she whispered. "Yes." Blair's face flushed red, then white, then crimson again. "So, this is it. You're throwing everything away because of her." Lucas didn't look at Hannah. "Because of me," he said. "Because I refuse to build a life on appearances. Because I made mistakes I'm trying to fix." "And what about the Kensington name?" Blair hissed. "My family won't let this go." "I'll deal with them," Lucas said. "Gladly." Blair's eyes glistened, not with sadness, but rage. "You'll regret this." Then she turned her glare to Hannah. "And you, wherever you came from, whatever fantasy you're living in, trust me, it won't last." Hannah held her gaze calmly, but inside, she was breaking. Blair spun on her heel and stormed out, heels echoing like gunshots. The front doors slammed. Silence swallowed the room. Lucas exhaled shakily. "Hannah, I'm sorry you had to see that." "It's okay," she said softly. "But this—" She gestured to the space around them. "All of this is too much." "Hannah, I can't put Theo through this," she said, voice trembling. "People yelling, talking about him like he's a problem, a stain. He's 4 years old, Lucas. He deserves calm. He deserves safety, not a war between families." Lucas stepped forward, desperate. "Please don't leave. Not like this." Margaret spoke from the stairs, anguish in her eyes. "Hannah, please reconsider. At least talk this through." But Hannah's mind was already made. She shifted Theo onto her hip. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I need to protect him. And right now that means getting him away from here." She adjusted his backpack, kissed his forehead, then walked toward the door. Theo looked over her shoulder. "Bye, Miss Margaret," he said softly. Margaret's lips trembled. "Goodbye, sweetheart." Lucas took a step after them, but stopped when he saw the way Hannah tightened her grip. She wasn't running, she was shielding her son, and that was a force stronger than anything he could fight. Hannah stepped out of the Avery mansion, the door closing behind her like the end of a yusur. Chapter neither of them had been ready to turn. By the time Hannah unlocked the door of their small apartment, the sun had long disappeared behind the dark line of the cliffs. The ocean wind followed them inside, cold and sharp. Theo clung to her shoulder, unusually quiet. Too quiet. "You okay, baby?" she whispered. Theo didn't answer. He just pressed his cheek against her neck. Raina poked her head out from the kitchenette. "Hey, you two took forever. Did they—" She paused mid-sentence. "Hannah, he's burning up." Hannah touched Theo's forehead again, hotter than before. Too hot. "I gave him medicine in the car," she said, panic tightening her voice. "It should have helped by now." Theo whimpered, his small hands trembling. "Mommy, I feel cold." Raina's face drained of color. No. We're not doing this at home. Get your bag. I'm calling the hospital." "It's late. The ER will be full," Hannah protested weakly, holding Theo close as he shivered. "And the insurance." Raina grabbed her shoulders. "He's your son. He comes first. We're going." 5 minutes later, they were in the car, headlights cutting through the coastal darkness. Theo's breathing grew shallow. Hannah whispered reassurance after reassurance, each one more desperate than the last. When they reached the county hospital, the waiting area was chaos. Crying toddlers, exhausted parents, the buzz of fluorescent lights humming overhead. Hannah hurried to the desk. "My son, he's sick, he's shaking, he has a fever." "Please take a seat," the receptionist said tiredly. "We'll call you when we can." "A seat?" Raina burst. "He's burning! He's—" Theo moaned, head lolling against Hannah's chest. "No," Hannah choked. No, please, someone help him." But no doctor came. The hall was packed. A nurse waved them toward a row of plastic chairs. Hannah sat, rocking Theo as if the motion alone might cool his fever. "Mommy, hurts," Theo whispered. Her heart cracked. Raina paced in front of them, pulling at her hair. "This is ridiculous. I'm calling for help, real help. Someone's gotta—" "Hannah!" The voice thundered down the hallway. Hannah's head snapped up. Lucas rushed toward them, out of breath, hair wind-tossed, jacket half-zipped, as if he'd driven with it flapping. He stopped in front of her, chest heaving. "I came as fast as I could," he said, voice rough. "Is he— God, Hannah, what happened?" "How did you even know?" she whispered. "You left," he said. "And it felt wrong. Then I called." He swallowed hard. Raina answered. Raina lifted her hands defensively. He already knew something was off. "Don't blame me." Lucas crouched in front of Theo. "Hey, champ. You're okay. I'm right here." Theo barely opened his eyes. "My tummy hurts," he murmured. Lucas looked up sharply. "Why is no one helping him?" "They told us to wait," Hannah said, sweaty and shaking. Lucas didn't yell, didn't threaten. He simply stood, walked to the desk, placed both palms on the counter, and spoke in a quiet, steady voice. "Please check on him again. He's struggling to stay conscious." Something in his tone, controlled, urgent, almost breaking, made the nurse stand straighter. Within seconds, a doctor appeared and guided them into a curtained examination room. Hannah held Theo tightly as nurses began checking his temperature, pulse, breathing. Theo cried when they tried to draw blood. Hey! Lucas leaned close. "Look up, buddy. See those dots on the ceiling?" Theo sobbed, confused. "What? Dots?" "Stars," Lucas whispered. "Secret stars. Let's count them together. Ready? 1, 2... Theo hiccuped, distracted, watching the ceiling instead of the needle. Hannah's breath shuddered. "Thank you," she whispered. Lucas shook his head. "I'm not leaving. Not tonight. Not ever again." The doctor returned 20 minutes later, charts in hand. "He has a viral infection," she said gently. "Nothing life-threatening, but he's dehydrated and needs fluids. We'll give him an IV and monitor him overnight." Hannah sagged into the chair, tears building. The doctor placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "He'll be okay. His fever should drop soon." They moved Theo into a small private room. The bed looked too big for him. The IV line looked too sharp. The room looked too white. Hannah sat on one side, holding Theo's hand. Lucas took the other. Theo whimpered. Mommy, I'm here, honey, she whispered, brushing his hair back. Lucas leaned closer. Want a story? Something about the ocean? Theo gave the faintest nod. Lucas began softly, his voice low and soothing. Once there was a ship made of silver wood. It sailed across the night water, brave enough to follow the moon. The waves tried to scare it, the wind tried to chase it, but the ship kept going because it knew someone small and brave was waiting for it at home. Theo blinked slowly, then settled. The rise and fall of Lucas's voice was steady, protective, warm. Hannah watched him, really watched him. This wasn't the man who vanished 5 years ago, leaving silence in his wake. This was someone terrified, someone trying, someone breaking apart just to keep a small boy breathing easier. Hours passed. Nurses came and went. Theo slept, fitful but safe. Lucas didn't move from the plastic chair. His body was stiff, his shoulders slumped, but he stayed. Each time Theo whimpered, Lucas reached for his hand, murmuring reassurance until he calmed. At 3 a.m, the room was still except for the beep of machines and the whisper of the heater. Hannah finally spoke. You didn't have to stay. Lucas kept his eyes on Theo. I did. He's my son. Her throat tightened. You weren't there before. I know. His voice cracked. But I'm here now, and I'm terrified, Hannah. I've never been this scared. She looked at him, really looked. The exhaustion, the worry, the guilt, the love. Something inside her softened, quietly, painfully. You're different tonight, she whispered. Lucas shook his head. No, I'm just finally being who I should have been. Theo stirred in his sleep, and both of them leaned closer instinctively. Hannah exhaled slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time, she saw not the man who ran, but the father afraid to lose the little boy he never knew he had. Morning crept into the hospital room quietly, like it was afraid to disturb the fragile peace inside. Soft daylight filtered through the blinds, landing gently on the small figure curled beneath a thin blanket. Theo stirred. His eyelashes fluttered. His tiny hand squeezed instinctively and found another hand holding it, warm and steady. He blinked open his eyes. Lucas was slumped in the plastic chair beside him, head tilted awkwardly to the side, chin against his chest. He hadn't even loosened his tie. One arm hung off the chair, the other still held Theo's hand like it was the only thing tethering him to the world. Theo frowned in the way little kids do when trying to solve a puzzle. Hey, he whispered. Lucas didn't wake. Theo tried again. Hey, mister? Still nothing. Finally, Theo poked his arm. Are you the ocean hero from last night? Lucas jerked awake with a snort, eyes wide. What? Oh, Theo, you're awake? Theo nodded seriously. You stayed all night. Yes, Lucas said, voice rough. I stayed. Because I was sick? Because... Lucas swallowed. Because you matter to me. Theo's brow furrowed again, the boy's version of deep thinking. You count stars good, he announced. Lucas laughed softly, rubbing his eyes. Happy to be useful. Hannah watched from the doorway. She hadn't slept yet either, but she'd stepped out to wash her face and now stood still, absorbing the scene. Theo awake, Lucas still holding his hand, the fragile calm of a morning that felt like a turning point. Theo glanced at Hannah. Mommy, he didn't leave. No, she said softly. He didn't. Is he staying now? Hannah walked closer, her heart thudded with the weight of a decision she'd wrestled with half the night. Lucas looked up at her, fear flickering across his face. She took a breath. Theo, she said gently, sitting on the edge of the bed, there's something I need to tell you. Something important. Theo immediately sat up straighter, clutching his blanket. Is it about the silver ship? No. She brushed a curl from his forehead. It's about him. Theo looked at Lucas again, really looked. Those gray eyes, the tilt of his smile, the dimple that appeared on his left cheek when he was confused. All right, Theo said in a small, brave voice. Tell me. Hannah swallowed hard. Sweetheart, Lucas is your dad. Your real dad. Silence. Theo blinked once, twice. He leaned forward, squinting, studying Lucas with the intense concentration only a 4-year-old could muster. Then he reached out and touched the side of Lucas's face. You have my eyes, Theo said softly. Lucas broke. A sound escaped him, a quiet, choked breath that was half sob, half laugh. He covered his mouth with his hand, shoulders trembling. Theo looked startled. "Are you sad?" "No," Lucas whispered, shaking his head. "I'm not sad. I'm just lucky." Theo crawled across the small bed with clumsy determination until he was close enough to wrap his arms around Lucas's neck. "Hi, Dad," he said simply. It shattered Lucas, utterly. He hugged Theo back with a gentleness so fierce it hurt to watch. "Hi, buddy," he whispered into the boy's hair. I'm so sorry I wasn't here before." Theo pulled away just far enough to look at him. "You're here now? Mommy says that's what matters." Lucas laughed through tears. "She's right." Hannah wiped her face quietly. She hadn't meant to cry, but some moments were too full to hold in. Hours later, after paperwork and instructions and a bag of medicine, they were allowed to take Theo home. Raina insisted on helping them inside, fussing over blankets and warm socks before heading to her shift. Theo settled on the couch, wrapped in a fleece blanket with cartoon whales. "Dad," he said, testing the word like it was candy, "can we build the Lego boat tonight?" Lucas looked at Hannah. "That's up to your mom," he said softly. Hannah hesitated. The past day had been a storm of emotions, but Theo's eyes were bright for the first time in days. "All right," she said, "but you're not staying overnight, and no trips anywhere without me. And you tell me before you show up." Lucas nodded immediately. "Of course, absolutely. Boundaries," she said firmly. "I'll follow every single one," he promised. That evening, Lucas arrived with a small bag of groceries and a Lego box shaped like a lighthouse. Theo cheered and dragged him to the living room floor. Hannah folded laundry in the kitchen doorway, watching them with equal parts suspicion, tenderness, and disbelief. Lucas knelt on the carpet, trying to make sense of the instructions. "This says step 8, but I think we accidentally did step 12 first." Theo held up a tiny plastic piece. "This is the roof. No, that's the chimney. No, wait, that's the engine." Lucas blinked. "The lighthouse has an engine?" Theo nodded confidently. "Yes." Lucas handed him the piece. "Then we'll put it wherever the engineer says." Theo giggled. As they worked, Lucas bumped his head on the coffee table, got a Lego brick stuck to his elbow, and accidentally built the lighthouse upside down. Theo found all of it delightful. "Dad, you're silly," Theo declared, climbing into his lap. "I'm learning," Lucas laughed. Later, they sat on the dock near the marina. Lucas taught Theo how to toss crumbs to the seagulls without letting them swoop too close. At bedtime, Lucas read the story of a ship sailing under moonlight. Theo fell asleep mid-sentence, curled against Hannah's shoulder. Lucas stood in the doorway, watching them. Hannah met his eyes, unsure what to say. He spoke first. "I don't want to replace anything," he said softly, "or rush anything. But I want to be here, in the small moments, the messy ones, the ones that don't make headlines." She didn't answer, not yet. But as she looked at Lucas kneeling on the carpet earlier, surrounded by Lego bricks and trying too hard, she felt something inside her shift. He wasn't just trying to be present, he was learning to stay. For 2 blessed days, life almost felt normal. Theo recovered quickly, his color returning, his energy overflowing again. Lucas visited every afternoon, building Lego towers, eating spaghetti with too much cheese, and walking Theo to the marina at sunset. Hannah saw them together and felt her heart bend in directions she didn't know it could anymore. But normal never lasted long for the Avery family. On the 3rd morning, everything shattered. Hannah was walking Theo toward his preschool when she noticed a man leaning against a parked SUV near the corner. He wasn't from the neighborhood, too sharp, too alert. When she turned the stroller, another camera clicked from across the street, then another, then a voice. "Miss Cole, is it true the Avery heir fathered your child in secret?" Hannah froze. Theo clung to her jacket. "Mommy," she stepped instinctively. "Please stop. Don't take pictures of my son." Another reporter pushed forward. "Is the boy the reason Mr. Avery canceled his high-profile engagement? Do you intend to seek custody support? Leave us alone," she snapped, pulling Theo behind her. A camera flashed directly in Theo's face. He yelped, startled, and covered his eyes. That broke her. Hannah scooped him up and ran back toward the building, her heart pounding, anger and fear twisting together. The reporters followed until a security guard intervened. By the time she got Theo safely inside, her hands were shaking. She barely managed to send Lucas a text. "They're here. paparazzi, at Theo's school. Come, please." She didn't expect him to reply so fast. "Lucas, on my way. Don't move. I've already called security." Within 20 minutes, 2 black sedans pulled up discreetly outside the preschool lot. Lucas ran toward them, breathless but sharp-eyed, with 2 plainclothes security personnel following. Hannah hugged Theo tightly. They took pictures of him. "I'm sorry," Lucas said, fury simmering behind his calm voice. "I should have known the leak would spread." Hannah stiffened. "The leak?" He nodded grimly. "Someone tipped the press. We don't know who yet, but it's public now." That was the beginning. By afternoon, hashtags about Avery's secret son were trending. Talk shows speculated about Hannah's motives. Some tabloids published old photos of her in Denver, weaving dramatic, fabricated tales. Lucas paced his office, jaw tight, hands shaking with restrained rage. "I won't let them attack her, or him." He made a choice, a drastic one. The next day, he held a press conference. It took place at the Avery Seabreeze Hotel, inside a medium-sized room with soft lighting and a neat row of chairs. Hannah watched from her apartment, sitting on the couch with Theo in her lap. The TV glowed in the dim room. Avery family crest behind him. Rows of cameras in front. Lucas stepped up to the microphone. He looked exhausted, stripped of the polished armor he usually wore. His tie was simple, his voice steady but raw. "Thank you for coming," he began. "I know the past few days have sparked questions. I'm here to answer them." The room murmured. Lucas continued. "5 years ago, I left my family. I left responsibilities. I left more than I understood at the time." He paused, eyes tightening. Hannah held her breath. "I did not know I had a son," he said firmly. "That is the truth. The boy was not hidden. He was lost to me because I ran, because I was not the man I should have been." The reporter scribbled. "But now I know him," Lucas said, voice warming. "And knowing him is the greatest change of my life. I am committed to being present, responsible, and honest, both as a father and as a man." Theo looked up from the couch. "Mom, he's talking about me." "I know, baby," Hannah whispered, kissing his hair. A reporter asked, "Was the mother involved in any—" Lucas cut her off sharply. "Do not drag her into assumptions. Hannah Cole is a devoted mother, strong, privet. She has protected our son when I didn't even know he existed." The way he said our son made Hannah's heart twist. He finished with a single steady breath. "No further questions today." When the broadcast ended, Hannah turned off the TV but kept staring at the blank screen. Theo leaned on her shoulder. "Dad talked nice." "Yes," she said softly. "He did." Meanwhile, across town, Blair Kensington pulled out her phone and recorded a teary-eyed video monologue about being betrayed and blindsided. It gained sympathy for about 2 hours, until the internet resurfaced old clips of Blair belittling waitresses and mocking employees. Hashtags flipped immediately. Suddenly, Blair wasn't a victim. She was a punchline. 2 evenings later, the Avery estate was quieter. Margaret, seeking order after chaos, had begun clearing her late husband's study. Dusty bookshelves, old model ships, ledgers untouched for years. Lucas and Hannah helped, partly because they were stuck waiting for the media storm to settle, and partly because the silence between them needed something to do. As Lucas pulled a stack of books from the highest shelf, something metallic clinked behind the wood. "What was that?" he asked. Margaret frowned. "Nothing should be in there. That shelf was sealed decades ago." Lucas pushed aside a row of old atlases and uncovered a small, hidden safe bolted into the wall. Margaret inhaled sharply. "Your father's handwriting. That's his code." With trembling fingers, she keyed in a date. The safe clicked open. Inside lay a thick envelope, yellowed at the edges. Lucas lifted it out slowly. The front read, "To my son, Lucas. Open when you feel lost, Dad." Margaret covered her mouth. "He wrote this before he passed. Years before. I never knew." Lucas unfolded the letter with hands that shook. Hannah watched him as he read in silence, eyes moving slowly, breath shallow. Finally, he whispered, He said he understood why I left." Margaret blinked hard. "What?" Lucas continued, voice breaking. "He wrote that our name became too heavy for him, too. That sometimes you have to leave the Avery world for fresh air, but—" His voice cracked again. "He said, never run so far that you abandon the people who love you, or the ones who may need you in the future." The room stilled. Margaret sunk into a chair, tears sliding down her cheeks. Hannah's throat tightened. Lucas folded the letter against his chest, eyes shimmering. "He wrote this before I ever met you," he said softly to Hannah. "Before he died, before any of this." Hannah whispered, "Then maybe he knew you better than you thought." Lucas exhaled shakily. "I think he wanted me to come back eventually." "And now you have," Margaret said, voice trembling. "Not just to us, but to your son." The ocean wind outside rustled the curtains as if validating the moment. A letter from the past, a truth in the present, a future waiting to be rewritten. Opportunity always came disguised as escape. That was what Lucas felt when the email arrived. A formal invitation from Alderton International Hotels, one of the most prestigious hospitality groups in the world. A CEO position, a staggering salary. London is home base. A promise of clean reputation, fresh press cycles, and oceans of distance between himself and every whisper in Seabrook. For a long moment, he just stared at the screen. His old self, the Lucas who'd run from expectations, from responsibility, from anything resembling permanence, stirred awake. One flight, that inner voice said, slick and tempting. Just one flight, and you get to start over, again. No questions, no past, no mess. He inhaled sharply, eyes burning, because it did tempt him. It tempted every part of him that still feared being a disappointment, every part that didn't trust he was enough to stay, to be a father, to be a partner worth choosing. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He typed the words, "I accept the position." He froze. From down the hall came the unmistakable patter of small feet, then a thump. Then the door to his guest room burst open. "Dad!" Theo shouted, launching himself onto the bed with the unfiltered joy only children have. "Dad, you promised. Tide pools today. You said when the moon hides, the crabs come out." Lucas blinked. "I did say that, didn't I?" "Yes." Theo poked him square in the forehead. "You said we would see the tiny creatures with claws, but not scary claws, remember?" Lucas stared at him, at the messy curls, at the hopeful eyes, at the tiny hands holding his pillow hostage, and the truth hit him like a wave. He didn't want London. He didn't want new towers or polished titles or shiny boardrooms. He wanted this. Morning tide hunts, Legos on the carpet, a small boy tugging at his sleeve with trust instead of fear. "Dad?" Theo asked, leaning close. "Are you thinking too much again?" Lucas laughed softly. "Maybe. Stop thinking. Come see the crabs." Theo grabbed his wrist with all his strength and pulled. Something loosened in Lucas's chest. He turned back toward the laptop, staring at the half-written acceptance email. Then he hit backspace. Once, twice, until the line was empty. Then he typed, "Thank you for the offer. I must decline. My life is here now. L. Avery." He hit send before he could second-guess the man he was finally choosing to be. That night, he prepared something he'd never done before. Not for a board, not for the press, and not for any polished version of a relationship he'd fumbled in the past. A backyard dinner, warm, small, human. Lucas strung soft yellow lights between two old trees in the Avery garden. He placed a simple wooden table beneath them. No luxury linens, no crystal glasses. Just two plates, a candle in a jar, and a folded sheet of paper weighed down by a small box. When Hannah arrived, her hair pulled back from the wind, she paused at the sight. "Lucas," she breathed, "what is this?" "A dinner," he said. "A real one. Not with the Avery heir, not with the runaway version of me, just me. With you." Hannah hesitated before sitting. The breeze carried the smell of the ocean, mixed with the soft glow of lights overhead. Shadows danced across her face as she looked at the table. Her eyes landed on the folded paper. "What's that?" "The truth," Lucas said. He handed it to her. She opened it slowly. Inside was a list, written in his messy, uneven handwriting. Each line was simple. "I left without a word. I let fear make choices for me. I wasn't there when you found out you were pregnant. I wasn't there when our son was born. I let you carry everything alone. I doubted you when you told me the truth. I failed you both before I even met my son." Hannah's fingers trembled as she read. "Lucas, I needed to name every mistake out loud," he said, voice soft but steady. "Because I can't undo them, but I can make sure I don't repeat them." Her breath hitched. "And," he added quietly, "I want you to know I turned down London." Her eyes shot up. You what? I won't run again, he said. Not from him, not from you, not from the life we can build if you'll let me try. She stared at him, anger, pain, love, and disbelief flickering all at once. You can't just throw away a job like that. I can, he said, if it means I don't lose my family. Family. The word hung between them like a fragile flame. Emotion cracked her voice. Lucas, don't make promises you can't keep. I'm not promising perfection, he said, leaning closer. Just presence. Every day, even the hard ones. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. You hurt me. I know, his voice wavered, and I deserve every bit of anger you have. She looked away. You hurt Theo too. Lucas swallowed. That's the one thing I will spend the rest of my life making right. Silence spread between them, deep, raw, heavy with everything they'd survived. Then Lucas reached for the small box on the table. Hannah. Her breath caught. He opened it, not dramatically, not rehearsed, just a simple trembling gesture. Inside was a modest ring, not flashy, not curated, not by a jeweler chosen by advisors, just a ring Lucas had chosen alone. For the first time in my life, he said gently, I'm asking a question with my real name, not Luke, not the runaway, me. He exhaled, voice trembling. Will you let me earn the right to call you my wife? Hannah's hand flew to her mouth. Tears spilled, real, messy, uncontrolled. Lucas, she whispered, half sob, half laughter. I haven't even forgiven you yet. He nodded. Then let me spend the rest of my life giving you reasons to. Her chair scraped softly as she stood. She didn't reach for the ring. She reached for him, her arms wrapped around his neck, her forehead pressed to his temple. I don't know my answer yet, she whispered, but I'm not walking away. He closed his eyes, breath breaking. That's enough, he murmured. For tonight, that's more than enough. Under the string lights, with the ocean behind them and the future trembling in front of them, they held each other. Not perfect, not healed, but choosing to stay. Saying yes didn't happen with violin music or dramatic lighting. It happened in Hannah's tiny living room the next morning, barefoot, hair messy, Theo humming to himself on the couch, when she looked at Lucas and said, half laughing, half serious, yes, I will marry you, but listen carefully. She poked a finger into his chest. If you ever try to run again, just once, I will call Raina, I will call Margaret, and the two of them will form an international search party so efficient it'll make the FBI jealous. Lucas's relief cracked into full laughter. I believe you. You should, she said. Both of them terrify me when they team up. Then I'll have to stay, he murmured, pulling her close. Happily. Theo looked up. What's happening? We're talking about the future, sweetheart, Hannah said. Theo climbed into Lucas's lap. Does the future have cake? Lucas smiled. Absolutely. And just like that, the decision settled. Imperfect, fragile, but real. Spring arrived quietly, painting the Avery property in fresh greens and pale blues. When the wedding day came, months later, it didn't feel like a society event. There were no reporters, no flashing cameras, no designer chaos, just life, just people who mattered. A row of white chairs lined the grass behind the estate, the sea stretching endlessly beyond the cliff's edge. String musicians played something soft and wind-kissed. Margaret supervised every detail with a composure that barely hid her excitement. Raina wore a sage green dress and sunglasses so large they could have been from a comedy skit. I'm crying already, she sniffed, waving a tissue, and this is just the chair rehearsal. Hannah, in an ivory dress simple enough to make the sky shine brighter, took a shaky breath before walking down the aisle. Lucas waited beneath an arch of wildflowers, his face lit with a joy she had never seen on him before. But the star of the ceremony, undeniably, was Theo. He marched confidently ahead of Hannah, with the ring box clutched in both hands, and absolutely no sense of speed control. Slow down, Hannah whispered urgently. I can't, Theo declared. My legs are too fast. He sprinted, nearly skidding toward the cliffside. Gasps filled the air. The ring box wobbled, teetered. Lucas lunged, catching it a split second before it flew into the ocean. A collective sigh swept the crowd. Theo planted his hands on his hips. Dad saved the day. Lucas ruffled his hair. Let's save the next crisis for the reception, okay? Margaret pressed a hand to her forehead. My heart. The ceremony continued, soft and heartfelt, until the officiant reached the traditional words. If anyone here objects, Theo threw both arms in the air. I object. Hannah's eyes widened. Theo, I'm hungry, he announced. Can we eat cake now? The crowd erupted into laughter. Even the officiant doubled over. Lucas wiped tears from his eyes. Objection noted. Food will be served immediately after the vows. Theo nodded solemnly and sat cross-legged in the grass, satisfied. From that moment on, no one remembered scandals or rumors or the shadows of the Avery name. They remembered laughter. They remembered a small boy demanding cake at the altar. They remembered a man choosing to stay. They remembered a woman who found courage after heartbreak. When the vows were spoken, quiet but certain, the ocean wind carried them gently across the cliffs. I choose you, Lucas whispered, today and every day. I choose the life we're building, Hannah replied. Not perfect, but ours. They kissed as waves crashed below like applause from the earth itself. Hours later, when the guests had gone and the string lights flickered softly in the dusk, Hannah and Lucas sat on the back steps of the estate. Theo leaned sleepily between them, still wearing his tiny flower crown, head on Lucas's shoulder. The sky was a deep velvet blue. The sea glittered with silver trails of moonlight. Theo stirred. Dad? Yes, buddy? Now that you're married, can I have a baby sister, or a baby brother, or a baby dragon? Hannah laughed. A dragon might be difficult. Lucas pretended to consider it. Well, maybe one day, but babies, not dragons. Theo yawned. Okay, but if we get a dragon, it sleeps in my room. Deal, Lucas chuckled. Silence settled, warm, gentle. Lucas brushed his thumb over Hannah's ring. Do you ever think about where we were 5 years ago? She did. 5 years ago, she had been standing in a cramped Denver apartment, terrified and alone, holding a positive pregnancy test with shaking hands. 5 years ago, she believed life was a maze with no exit. 5 years ago, she thought being left meant she would never be chosen. She looked at her son, safe, warm, loved, nestled between two people who had fought their way back to each other. She looked at the man beside her, flawed, scarred, stubborn, but present, finally present. I think about it, she whispered, but it doesn't hurt the same way anymore. Lucas laced his fingers with hers. Why? Because those years brought me here, she said, to this moment, to this family. She kissed Theo's forehead, savoring the peace. And I wouldn't trade it, she added softly. Not even the hard parts. Lucas pressed his forehead against hers. Neither would I. The waves murmured their approval. The string lights swayed in the breeze. And beneath them sat a woman who once feared she would always walk alone, a little boy who called two people home, and a man who finally understood that love wasn't a place to run from, but a place to return to. A family formed not by perfection, but by choosing each other every day.